I've just been thinking about something for the last few months about funding the border and all the problems we're having on our border.
Mm-hmm.
In 1986, the Republicans passed ICRA, which cut funding for the border, which coincidentally is the same time they were importing drugs through the CIA, Oliver North, and that Iran-Contra deal.
Right, but they weren't bringing them through the border. They were flying them into Texas, into Henderson, Texas, weren't they?
Yep, and they were flying them in Media Airport in Arkansas and through the National Guard and all kinds of stuff to bring drugs in. And at the same time, they cut funding for Border Patrol, and they have blocked funding on the border ever since.
Well, Reagan's big immigration reform, and I think that was in '86. Part of that was doing away with the old laws that basically said that employers were being held responsible. This is why Eisenhower had his Bracero program in the mid '50s. It was that we used to go after employers. And what Reagan did was say, no, we're not going to go after employers anymore. Now we're going to go after the immigrants themselves. They're going to be the criminals rather than the employers. And frankly, the employers are the giant magnet.
Right. Not only that, but I think they may be still bringing in drugs because who else has the money to work a deal with China to get enough components shipped into Mexico, formulated, and bring enough drugs of the new drugs over this border to infect and kill people across the country? Yeah. It can't be the mules they're locking up on the border and that they're aiming at and the people driving around. It's got to be somebody with a lot of money.
And it's not just that, Ramon. More than 80%, if my memory serves me right. It might be more than 75%, but it was a real high number in that neighborhood. You can look it up and get the exact number of the people who have been arrested for trying to smuggle drugs from south of our border into the United States have been United States citizens. They're the ones who are, really well-paid drug mules because they're the ones who have the greatest probability of getting through the border. And mostly they're going through ports of entry. They're not, nobody, those people that you saw crossing the Rio Grande with their little kids in a backpack, they are not carrying drugs. None of them. I mean, it's just not happening, right? That's not how it works.
They're running from the drug problem that we created by making those cartels so powerful the government dealing with them directly and bringing drugs in wholesale, ruining those areas down there. And now they're running here because their governments can't control those powerful cartels. And they don't want to register guns here, which means that if we could figure out who's getting those cartels, they're American-made guns to protect those drug fields and the drug streets in America by guns in the hands of criminals and kids. They don't want to register any guns, and they don't want to increase funding on the border. It makes me think they're still bringing drugs in.
Probably, yeah. It's, there are layers of scam here, Ramon, just layers and layers of scam. And doing something honest about this situation is not something that at least the GOP is inclined to do, sadly. Speaking of drugs, the caller we had just a moment ago, I don't know if you've caught it, but just in the last day or two, there have been it hasn't been a big story, but it's out there. It's in the Washington Post, it's in the New York Times, Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, whatnot, mainstream media, that Ronnie Johnson, they called him Dr. Feelgood when he was the White House doctor. He's now a congressman from Texas. But I didn't realize that there's several dozen people who work in the White House, in this medical center that they've got there. It's like some little, complete with its own pharmacy. And they were passing out narcotics, they were passing out sleeping pills, they were passing out tranquilizers to people who weren't even supposed to be able to get them. I mean, this is designed for either the employees of the White House or for the president and his family. But apparently they were passing out OxyContin and fentanyl and morphine and, party times in the Trump White House. And now, the FBI is starting to look into it. It's very weird.